Director Adam Green said that he got the idea for antagonist Victor Crowley's backstory when he attended Camp Avoda in 1983 at age 8. During the first day at camp, the counselor had warned the kids that a man named Hatchet Face would come and get them if they went near a particular cabin. Since Green was starting to get into horror movies, he decided to make up a backstory for Hatchet Face, which he told to the rest of the kids in the cabin that same night. This backstory, which involved a deformed boy accidentally being killed by his father, who was trying to save him from a house fire, was eventually reused for Crowley's origin story in Adam Green's 2006 film, Hatchet.
What can I do you two for?
Do you do a haunted swamp tour?
Why, I do the only haunted swamp tour? Real live ghosts? Ooh, tales of the macabre. And actual sites that are still damned by voodoo curses.
I hate you.
Oh,
Well,
leaving right now, 40 bones each.
$40?
Yes.
All right.
you spot me?
Well, you don't have any cash?
No, I'm just not paying for this bullshit.
Let them fight. You're a wizard, Harry.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. I'll be back.
Death has come to your little town, Jim.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Chills and Thrills. Connor back here with you, along with Chris as always. And today we're digging into kind of a newer horror franchise, but they base themselves off of like the classic 80s horror films, you know, a bunch of blood, a bunch of guts, you know, some nudity. We're doing the Hatchet franchise and digging into those 4 films. And I know this was kind of fun for me because I know Chris had never seen these movies, but I actually my teacher, we used to go into her, Miss Meltreader, we used to go into her classroom on lunch, and we would do extra credit here and there, or we would just she had Netflix on one of her smart boards, so we'd watch movies on lunch, and we just happened to see this and clicked on it. Probably not an appropriate film to be watching in school on a lunch hour, but ever since then, we watched this film, and then we ended up, I believe, watching the second one in her class on lunch hour as well, and then the third and fourth one hadn't came out yet by the time I had graduated. And I had a blast with this film back then, and it's kind of I guess you could say it's developed a cult follower in me for this film. I enjoy it. I have fun. It's schlocky. It's cheesy. The acting isn't the greatest. It is definitely a B horror movie. So I was definitely intrigued to see what Chris thought about this on his first watch.
Yeah, I think you could make the case that it's not an appropriate movie to watch on any lunch hour, let alone for high schoolers. No, you hit the nail on the head in terms of describing it. There are some B movies that are sort of B movies by just their nature. Like that's kind of just inherently what they are. This one feels almost like a B movie on purpose, and I don't mean that necessarily as a bad thing. This one feels like they are intentionally trying to emulate that kind of low budget, kind of schlocky kind of feel, and kind of do it on purpose in a way that's kind of having fun with it, not in of like excuse our movie for just being openly horrible because it's a B movie, LOL. Like no, like they're having fun with the genre, and that's kind of fun. It's charming in its own way.
Yeah, I hadn't, there were a lot of horror films coming out, but there's not really a lot of like main antagonists. We got the Freddy, we got Jason, we got Michael Myers and stuff. There weren't a lot of new ones coming out. So like I seen this and I was like, okay, like Victor Crowley, like I like him as a killer. I like the portrayal by Kane Hodder, of course. And I got to the second one and eventually down the road, the third and the fourth one. And I was like, okay, like if this could, like if these films had like some good money, and like could do like a proper like theatrical release. Like maybe Victor Crowley could like blow up into like the next big horror icon, because like I said, he's got like the cult following for these films and stuff like that. Like horror, a lot of horror fans know who Victor Crowley is, but people outside of the horror community, probably 99% of them don't know what Hatchet or Victor Crowley is. And I think these all four of these films are like good fun and like deserve a watch. You know, they give you some laughs, they give you some blood and guts, you know, and you know, these films definitely, this especially this first one, have some nudity in it. So any younger watchers, I mean, probably not very good for our younger viewers of the horror genre for this one.
Yes, avert your eyes, children.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, and it to me this feels a little bit, these movies, like they have that niche following, and it feels like they were a little bit early to kind of, you know, with the way the internet has sort of popularized and streaming services and things like that. Now you can kind of cultivate a bit of an audience in a way that isn't, oh, the movie has to be released in theaters by a big studio, you know, in the way that like these films were kind of, they walked so that the later Terrifier movies could kind of run. You know, the Terrifier movies always feel like kind of like the next, not the next iteration in terms of being the same kind of movies as these, but the next iteration of an indie horror movie kind of creating a bit of a modern horror icon. And the Terrifier movies with Art the Clown did kind of break out and reach that greater success. Like I think Terrifier 3 made like what, 50 million in North America or something like that, like some quite impressive number for what it was. And these movies weren't able to do that, but it kind of feels like these were the stepping stones to kind of create that non-theatrical audience and fan base for new horror movies that could kind of grow into something a little bit bigger and a little bit more well known.
Yeah, I know the director said that, you know, he loved the 80s like splatter horror, and he wanted to bring that back to the late 2000s. And like you said, these were a limited release to theaters, and once the theaters like a lot of them seen how graphic and stuff they were, these were pulled from theaters very quickly. And even the unrated or the rated version, you know, that is still pretty graphic for a 2006 film. And it just, they couldn't keep them in theaters for long, and so they went to video. And now I know the I believe it was the third and fourth one went direct to video, and the first two got very limited releases in theaters. So they didn't really make whole lot of their money back.
Yeah, and as you know, as other things sort of evolve, you know, once upon a time there was no releasing a movie with an X rating or an unrating or an unrated rating. It was just one of these sort of standards and practices that unless your film had a rating certificate from the MPAA and that rating was R or lower, a lot of exhibitors would just refuse to screen a movie and refuse to book a movie because they didn't want any outrage by any members of the audience, parents or otherwise. But now, in these sort of post lockdown ages, there are not a lot of big movies to always keep the theaters populated. And theaters, you know, I had this experience as a theater manager. You know, a lot of movies that normally wouldn't get very many screens or very many showings are getting some of those opportunities because there is less of an output from Hollywood, and the output from Hollywood is not as good. And so theaters get a little desperate. So you see anime movies getting booked in, you know, maybe 1,500 theaters where before it might have been 300 theaters. You know, you see an unrated, which used to be a no-no, horror film like Terrifier 3 getting booked into 2,500 theaters when normally it might have been lucky to be booked into 500 theaters. You know, you're seeing more theaters willing to give more chances to anything than might have a hope of bringing an audience in. And then so when they have that platform, they have the ability to kind of cultivate a crowd. And so it's just this self-reinforcing thing. So things have kind of gotten to a point now where there is a bit more of a window and an opportunity for these lower budget, bold, wild, very grisly, hardcore horror movies to kind of get put out there and to kind of get a reception from an audience instead of just kind of being nipped in the bud of, well, we won't play them and we won't keep it because it's too violent and just put it on DVD. It's not like that anymore. It's getting a little better in some ways.
Absolutely. I would have loved to, been able to see like Terrifier 3 did. Like if this was released modern day brand new, like what kind of crowd this would bring, if any at all, like what kind of budget they could get, how much money that, it would bring into theaters. Cause I mean, I Terrifier 3, I think had like a $2 million budget. It was self-fund, through like the director and fans and stuff like that. And like you said, it made 50. I think what I seen when I looked it up is it was right around 80 million on a $2 million budget. So I don't think this probably wouldn't have done what that did. But just to see, say it had a $2 million budget or so for this, because this is fairly cheap. And even if it would have done 20 million, that would have been great for the film.
Yeah, and again, it is, that's Terrifier 3 we're talking about. That's after you had, the first Terrifier was very big on streaming platforms. That I think a lot of people that have scrolled through Netflix or wherever have seen that thumbnail of Art the Clown's face on the poster, and just thought like, wow, that's a creepy design, whether or not you stopped to watch the movie at all. And then Terrifier 2 kind of built the audience, they built the audience over the course of several movies. They didn't just drop Terrifier and make, 80 million at the global box office. It was cultivated over several entries and several years, and they were able to get that platform, and it was right place, right time. And the third one was able to really kind of break out, and the fourth one will probably be even bigger. But it's kind of carved out that niche. And yes, who knows? These films might have been able to carve out something of their own under different circumstances as well.
Well, I'll dig into a little bit of the background for you on the first Hatchet film. Hatchet is a 2006 American slasher film written and directed by Adam Green. The film has an ensemble cast including Joel David Moore, Tamara Feldman, Dion Richmond, Mercedes McNabb, Perry Shen, Jolie Foriavanti, Joel Murray, Richard Reel, Patricia Darbo, Joshua Leonardo, Tony Todd, Robert Englund, and Kane Hodder. And the plot follows a group of tourists on a New Orleans haunted swamp tour who accidentally get stranded in the wilderness only to be hunted by a vengeful, supernatural, deformed man who kills anyone that enters the swamp. Hatchet premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival on April 27, 2006, before releasing in limited theaters domestically on September 7, 2007. It received mixed reviews from critics, but became a cult classic among some audiences, and the film's success spawned a film series including 3 sequels, and a comic book series followed soon thereafter.
Nice. So a nice little, legacy for the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we'll ever get another one of these, but this first film, I definitely enjoy. I've watched this a lot since 10th grade, and I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy that this is a film that I watched with one of my 10th grade teachers just on lunch. Didn't it was probably during the winter, cold, didn't feel like going outside to drive to Taco Bell or wherever to go get lunch. So just hung out inside and watched some movies, and this just happened to be one of them. So I'll go ahead.
Yeah, and I like that the cast, they give certain genre actors, their props a little bit by including them in. You get Tony Todd in a small role, Robert Englund, who plays Freddy Krueger, in a cameo. Kane Hodder, of course, playing Victor Crowley. It's like a nice little thing. Even Joel David Moore, he was in Grandma's Boy and Avatar and things like that. It's nice to see some of these other characters. And I mean, for me personally, Dion Richmond, who plays Marcus, like I always know him from Not Another Teen Movie. So there's a couple of semi-familiar faces for genre fans in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to the cast, I love the cast altogether, and I mean, like I said, there's a lot to like about this movie. It's one of those B movies that I can throw on and have fun with, and not take something so seriously. It's got some jokes in it, some good kills, and I think it's fun. So I think this will be a good conversation once I get to the fun facts and our categories for it.
For sure.
Why don't I go ahead and get into a trailer for the film? We'll get off and read a plot synopsis, and then we'll get to those fun facts and numbers and everything that I was just mentioning.
Once upon a time, there was a boy named Victor Crowley. Folks weren't too kind to Victor, so he stayed hidden in his daddy's house, out in the bayou. One night, some mean children came to his house, and there was a bad fire. And when his daddy chopped down the door to save him, he didn't know Victor was pressed against the other side. And poor Victor Crowley died. They say people disappear in those woods. And legend has it, if you get close enough to the old Crowley house at night, you can still hear Victor Crowley roaming in the woods, crying for his dad.
I want to go home. We're all gonna die.
Samson and his son Ainsley are hunting alligators in a swamp. While Ainsley is urinating, Samson falls silent. Ainsley finds Samson dead before he too is attacked and killed by an unseen being. During a Mardi Gras celebration in New Orleans, a group of friends including Ben and his best friend Marcus decide to go on a swamp tour. They find the tour closed because the guide Reverend Zombie was sued for negligence. Reverend Zombie suggests they try a place farther down the street owned by the inexperienced tour guide Sean. Ben pays for himself and Marcus, and Sean leads them to his tour bus, where the other tourists, Jim and Shannon Permadio, a Minnesota married couple, two models, Misty, Jenna, and their agent Shapiro, and hot-tempered Mary Beth are waiting. Guiding their boat through the swamp, they are warned to leave by a hermit, Jack Cracker, whose warnings are dismissed. As they venture further, the boat begins to sink, which forces them to abandon it. Jim is then bitten and injured by an alligator, while Mary Beth finds an abandoned shack which she identifies as the old Crowley house. Mary Beth tells the story of how deformed Victor Crowley and his father, Thomas, lived in the house until Victor's accidental death when Thomas accidentally struck Victor in the head with a hatchet while trying to free him from the house when it caught fire due to teens throwing fireworks at it in an attempt to scare Victor. After Thomas's eventual death, Victor is now said to roam the swamp as a vengeful spirit, killing those he comes across. Mary Beth warns the group that they aren't safe in the swamp, but they dismiss her story as an urban legend. As Jim and Shannon approach the house, Victor appears and kills them, causing the group to flee. Shapiro splits from the group and is killed by Victor as well. The remaining survivors decide to return to the house where they can arm themselves. While at the house, Mary Beth and Ben discover Samson and Ainsley's remains. Mary Beth reveals that they were her father and brother, and she had come to the swamp to find their bodies. Victor then ambushes the group and critically injures Jenna with a belt sander. Sean attempts to save Jenna by attacking Victor with a shovel, but is disarmed and decapitated with it by Victor, who then finishes Jenna off by impaling her on top of the shovel. The survivors decide to lure Victor back to his house and set him on fire with the gasoline tanks in the shed. While they do this, Misty goes missing. Ben then discovers her mutilated body when Victor throws her remains at him. Luring Victor into the house, the group ignites the tank and sets Victor on fire, but rainfall extinguishes the fires. Victor then kills Marcus and chases after Ben and Mary Beth, where Ben's foot is impaled by a pole thrown by Victor. Mary Beth and Ben push the pole forward, resulting in Victor to be impaled on it when he charges after them, seemingly killing him. Taking a spare boat out of the swamp, Mary Beth falls into the water and is ensnared by seaweed. She sees Ben's hand at the surface and reaches up for it and is pulled out, only to be met by Victor, who had severed Ben's arm and used it to bait Mary Beth. Victor grabs Mary Beth as Ben lies dying on the boat. The screen then fades to black, leaving Mary Beth's fate unknown. All right, how about I throw some quick numbers at you? We aren't going to do the inflation for these ones because with the limited release and the theaters and stuff like that, the budget way outweighs the return on these films. So, but I will give you the budget and the box office.
Sounds good. And plus, I mean, these were never designed to be sort of like big theatrical endeavors. Once you have a movie with that small of a budget, you're not angling for the theatrical proceeds. You drop it on DVD, you get it on Blu-ray, you get some streaming rights deals, and that movie's sort of paid for, so.
Yeah, absolutely. This film did have a budget of $1.5 million, and in its limited run at the theater, it had a return of $208,550. So again, you're making back like 12-15% of your budget. So you're not even concerned about it by then. But the US, the video rentals is where this film boomed, and I'll get to that here in a second. This is rated a 5.7 out of 10 on IMDb, a 57% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, again, a 57% rating on Metacritic, and then 81% of Google users liked this film, so they helped us out. But we got a strong 5.7 or 57% from IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, and Metacritic.
Yeah, and I feel like, and I'm not trying to belittle the efforts of the filmmakers or try and talk down about it, but I almost feel like this is the kind of movie that's almost designed to try and aim for like a 5 out of 10, like a 5 or 6 out of 10, like it's kind of like, it kind of knows what it's what it is, it's trying to emulate that sort of B movies, taking it as a style and not settling for it as a compromise, if that makes sense,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're not shooting for the stars on this one to have the fans and Rotten Tomatoes say that this is an all time great. You're just trying to make a fun film that a popcorn flick.
Yeah, I don't know if horror fans would like the kind of slasher movie that would get a 95% from the critics on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't know what that movie would necessarily look like, but I don't know if typical traditional horror fans would enjoy that very much.
Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street. Come on.
Yeah,
man.
I mean, okay, sure, but I feel like even the critics like only give those great reviews because there's pressure to do so. Because if they don't, they'll get roasted. I feel like they're just like, oh, it's okay to give a good review to Halloween. It's okay to give a good review to Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, it's Wes Craven, God forbid.
Yeah, like, oh, these are classics. We can't talk bad about them.
Here's the one I was talking about a second ago. The film reportedly made $6 million in the United States rentals during its first 3 weeks of release, and the film has sold over 597,000 units in North America, translating into just over $8.2 million. So there is your return.
Yeah, well, and also, if there's any ambiguity about whether or not these films were profitable or profitable relative to what they needed to be, they have made 4 of them. If this was some kind of money-losing endeavor, there would not have been a Hatchet 2, a Hatchet 3, and a Victor Crowley and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's Victor Crowley dolls and shirts and everything else that comes with like the making a franchise or like getting the first one with a big boom. They get all the sales, and then of course the sequels start spawning. So yeah, I mean when you make $8 million on video sales back then, I mean I'm sure that would translate into I'm sure it would add a couple 100,000 or maybe even $1 million more today with the price of 4Ks and everything else that has come out.
Exactly.
My last number here for you is there are 11 deaths in this film, averaging to 1 death every 7.54 minutes. So a pretty good pace for the first entry in the franchise.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good clip. It's something like an 80, 85-ish minute movie, and I think you get a kill every 6 or 7 minutes. That's a good clip to maintain.
Absolutely, I will take it. I will not complain because the films pretty much get shorter from here on out, and the kills they double and they definitely add on later on down the road. I'll hit you with some fun facts here. I probably got about 7 or 8 of them. But writer and director Adam Green created a no CGI rule for post production. The only CGI that was used was to remove on screen wires and camera setups.
That's pretty awesome. That's a nice mentality. I mean, I'm not one of these folks that believes like, oh, you can't ever or shouldn't ever use CGI. But certainly back in 2006, I think that any CGI you would have used for like digital blood, I think even nowadays CGI blood still doesn't look particularly good. And in 2006, 2007, it definitely didn't. There's a movie, The Devil's Rejects, which has a moment where it goes they use CGI blood and it's just painfully obvious. And so, that I think that's the right perspective. If you want to do a horror movie, you want to keep the kills and the practical stuff. Like you want to keep that real.
Absolutely, and it helps you know where the money went to. You love seeing the money go to the special effects and them put the actual time and effort into it to make a fake severed head or whatever it takes to actually get the kill. Because if you watch the special features to any of these films, you'll see like them like the kills like dialed down and them actually taking the time to get the shots, and then it takes 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 attempts at it, but once they do, you see the entire like crew start cheering because they know like, all right, like there's one more effect without CGI. We did it. It took a little bit longer, but they did it, and you can see like the effort and the excitement that they have with like the no CGI rule. So it's fun to see that.
Yeah, for sure.
This movie was the last production to shoot in Louisiana before Hurricane Katrina hit.
Oof. Wow, that's a interesting honor to have.
Yeah, I don't know if that's an honor or I mean, you're glad that they finished it before Hurricane Katrina hit.
Yeah. Yeah.
My next one here is when actor Joel David Moore vomits on screen, it is real. Director Adam Green did not want the actor spitting out fake vomit like most movies do, though Moore managed to throw up on his own for the first take. He was supplied with a mixture of cold clam chowder and orange juice for the second take.
Oh gosh.
I don't like clam
That
chowder, and
that would good lord, that would make me throw up, man.
right. That does not sound like a mixture that would go down smooth.
No, not at all, not at all.
In all 3 of the Hatchet films, pardon my language here, someone says the line, "You've got to be fucking kidding me," and this time it is spoken by Ben's character.
Yeah, and that's actually, I have another line that's my favorite line in the movie, so we can talk about that line here, and it's at least an honorable mention because it occurs right after they've set Victor Crowley on fire, and then it starts to rain, which puts him out, and it's a perfect delivery of that line, and so I think that's great that it's brought up.
Absolutely. Once I kind of found that fun fact there, I kind of was curious on where else it was said in the other films, so I might have once I was watching, I watched all of them to do the research ahead of time, and sure enough, in every single one. So I was like, all right,
Yeah, that's
IMDb does
great.
not lie.
Yeah, Star Wars has lines like "I've got a bad feeling about this," so Hatchet
Yeah.
can have that line.
Another one here is in the cemetery. There is a crypt with the name Green written over the entrance. There is a reference to director Adam Green.
Ah, very nice. And also for people who are a bit more, uh, you know, if they've developed their horror movie collections a bit, on the Shout Factory or Scream Factory Friday the 13th box set, Adam Green participates in a number of the audio commentaries for several of those films.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he's on a couple of them. He's on, I want to say at least 2 or 3. But yeah, because he talks about sometimes like when he's making like stuff that he did for Hatchet or how he made Hatchet like relative to those films. Yeah, very fun.
Well, I need to stop slacking, and I need to get on some audio commentaries. See, I just watched the special features. I haven't listened to a lot of
See,
audio commentaries.
and I'll admit, I'm one of those that I am these days. As a kid, I watched it all, but these days, I'm much more inclined to watch the movie with an audio commentary than I am to watch all of the various making of documentaries because I just like the idea of watching the movie and getting info dumped a lot of stuff. And yeah, Adam Green, I don't want to be overstepping, but like I feel like there's at least two movies that he's part of audio commentaries for, but I actually think it's more than that. But that's just off the top of my head. They're good commentaries.
Absolutely, I need to hop on them because I'm always down to learn more about the film and things like that. So,
Mhm.
and it's always interesting conversation in those from the ones I have watched.
For sure.
If you watch the first three Hatchet films in a row without opening and end credits, it would be one uninterrupted storyline revolving around just a few days in the swamp.
Yeah, very much like sort of if you chopped off the opening and ending moments of the first three Evil Dead movies, they would kind of just play as one big stream. I kind of like that. It was weird to watch this one because it felt like the ending really was a weird cut to black. I was like, "Oh, okay, so that's the ending." Like it felt almost like I don't know if it was intentional or it felt like maybe they didn't have the proper footage or gag to kind of end it or maybe it just wasn't the proper musical note, but it just feels like it just stops mid-sentence and I was like, "Huh, that's a little bit of an odd thing, but it's kind of interesting and cool to hear that the sequels kind of string together in one row like that."
Yeah, that's something I was gonna bring up if you didn't was how abrupt the ending is. We were watching it and when I was in high school and you get Victor kind of like screaming at the end and then it just cuts to black instantly and music starts playing and you're like what in the hell is going on here? Like I I was confused and like we almost instantly the next lunch period like popped on the second one and we're like, "Oh, okay, now like, now it makes more sense that we see the connection." So, I don't know if
Mhm.
you watched the second one yet or just
I
this
haven't
one.
watched I haven't watched any of the others yet. No.
Okay. All right. Well, Chris is in for a treat.
Yeah, I suppose.
The horribly deformed young Victor Crowley is actually played by a beautiful young actress named Rylea Vanderbilt. When makeup effects artist John Carl Beekler needed a model to test the latex prosthetic on, Rylea was the volunteer. And because the makeup effects had already been modeled to her face for the test shots, Rylea played him for the entire film.
Huh. That's very interesting. It's always fun to hear pieces of trivia and facts about that.
Absolutely. I had no idea, but I mean
Yeah, and
she does a
yeah,
very nice job playing the young Victor Crowley in all
yeah,
his
and
beautifulness.
Google Images reveals that she's a very lovely looking woman.
She
Perfectly
absolutely is. So
perfectly
props
not
off to her.
deformed. Yeah,
Yeah.
perfectly not deformed.
Here's one for you that you might like. Danielle Harris auditioned for Mary Beth Dunstan in this film, but director Adam Green didn't want to be accused of doing stunt casting by putting an iconic horror actress in the lead. So he subsequently chose Amara Zaragoza instead. And then he subsequently changed his mind for the sequels, though, when he realized putting her in the lead would actually be a bonus. And in addition, with the original actress Amara Zaragoza being reluctant to appear in another Hatchet film after this one.
Wow, interesting. Gosh, because that almost just makes me wish that he'd gone with Danielle Harris from the beginning because because what it looks like outwardly to me, because I did a little bit of research to see, is that it looks like, oh, he had some success with this first one, and then he decided to go after a bigger star for the sequels. It's like, oh, he gets a little bit of momentum under him, and then he's like, oh, well, now we'll just recast the actress with Danielle Harris. It's like, man, you should have just went with the fun choice and cast Danielle Harris from the get go.
Absolutely, because she absolutely wanted it, and I mean, if you watch the special features, she kind of gives him a look, and after like one of the scenes they were filming in a sequel, I believe it is the second one, and she's like, "Was I right or was I right?" And Adam Green just kind of puts his head down, and he's like, "You were right."
That's funny. That's funny.
My last one for you here is this film features horror icons such as Robert Englund, most known for playing Freddy Krueger, Tony Todd, most known for playing Candyman, and John Carl Beekler, director of Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood, and a special effects legend. And then last but not least, Kane Hodder, who's most known for appearing as Jason Voorhees in 4 feature films. And then in this, he also plays Victor Crowley and portrays Victor Crowley's father as well. So it's a recurring thing where Adam Green likes to put horror icons from previous films in his films, and we'll see that as the films continue. And I'm curious if you'll be able to point out, who they are and what they're from down the road.
Yeah, it's always fun. I've got my, I'm well versed in that era of horror films. I grew up on that stuff. So yeah, I spotted Robert Englund, Kane Hodder, without any problems at all, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I love seeing it. I love seeing who he's brought into some of these films and stuff. But as it goes on, it's definitely, if you're a horror fanatic, you can point them out. There's so many of them, but it's so fun. And he says he loves to do it for the fans, and he likes it because they're well seasoned actors and they can play like good little quick bit parts in the movies. But it's a nice call out to the fans as well. So you love to see that.
Yeah, that's great.
That is all I have for you on the fun facts. So Chris, why don't I ask you who your favorite character was in this first Hatchet film?
It was actually, without a doubt, it was Marcus. I just liked his sense of humor and his attitude, and like, he's the guy that didn't want to be there. He's talking trash on it the whole time. Like, I don't know, man. Marcus was my guy in this one.
I couldn't agree with you more. He was the comic relief, and he absolutely, he's like, you want to leave all this, they're partying in Mardi Gras, and he's like, you want to leave all this to go look at some damn lights in a swamp, and he's like, you don't have to come with me, Marcus. But he was the one good friend, and for being the one good friend to the guy who goes with him and enjoys it, he ends up giving up his life and getting killed. But he was absolutely the most fun in the film. Like I said, he was the comic relief. He had some of the best lines and line delivery, which we'll get into. But I mean, a lot of the characters were kind of just meh for me. But I don't know. He was definitely just the easiest one to like, because he did the most for the film. I think Ben was good. The Misty and
was it Jenna, the other one, or no? Which one was Jenna? I don't know. I'm not sure. I off one viewing, I don't have it all committed to memory.
Yeah, you were right.
Okay.
Misty and Jenna, like their banter back and forth was fun. Some of the stupid things they said would give you a laugh, but
yeah,
it was easily hands down Marcus, like you said.
For sure.
Now, for a favorite score for this film, I listened to this one again on YouTube. A lot of these films we're doing recently are hard to find, and I did end up finding this one on YouTube, and I like the score. It was called Like Moss to the Flame, and it was kind of right after the first Victor Crowley attack, where he kills the married couple, and they're kind of heading through the woods. They don't know where to go in the swamp. And I don't know if it's like a soft, subtle piano. Of course, I'll crop it in here, but it's just very eerie and very like kind of like a spooky vibe almost. And I liked it. It was very subtle, but it hit me the hardest for what the soundtrack gave. So I chose Like Moss to the Flame.
Yeah, that's actually the one that I went with too. Coincidentally, I'm like, it's just got a good sound to it. It's hard to describe. So much horror movie music can sound kind of generic and just kind of be, it's stingers to make you jump and just low ambience to make it creepy, But I mean, I like that track.
Absolutely. Like you said, it was the one that stuck out to me the most. So a lot of it is like I don't ever like to hate on like composers or anything like that, but a lot of it was just like generic like background horror music, you know.
Yeah, indeed.
All right, there's so many I have no idea where you're gonna go with this one. But what was your favorite quote from the film?
Yeah, there's there's more than a few you could go with. Uh, so I like when Marcus is helping to carry the injured old man, you know the other guy turns to him and is complaining that they're having to carry the injured man while the other guys are back there with the ladies, and so then Marcus is just like. I just want to get to the road, then I'm going to whoop your ass. Like I'm tired of you being an idiot. Like as soon as I get my hands free, like I'm going to throw you a beating. I just love it.
Yeah, there's so many from him, and one of the ones I went with was where he hides up in the tree, and right there is the like comedic gold in itself, where Ben is like he's like, where's Marcus at? And he goes, up here. And they look up and he's hiding in a tree. And Mary Beth asks him, like, what can you see from up there? And he's like, I can see ain't no dead elephant man coming to get me. And that one just gave me a good laugh every time. And I mean, there's other ones too, like where Misty's trying to dial on her phone and she's like, are you sure the number's 911? And
Yes, that was the big one.
he says something about him being in the South. There might be a different area code. And I'm just like, oh, man.
Yeah, which I mean, I suppose if you're the person who's never had to even think about dialing 911 in your entire life, I suppose you might have that fear of like, well, do area codes matter for 911? Every other phone number is a 10-digit phone number, like is it really a thing? I can understand that, I guess. If you're dense enough and you're scared enough, you're like, I don't want to screw up.
Yeah, there's so many in this film. Marcus is trying to draw Victor Crowley out, and he's telling him, "Come on, you freak! You look like you've been molested by wolves and stuff like that."
Yeah.
It's funny stuff like that. This is one of those like perfect movies that like stuff like this belongs in because it is a B movie. It knows what it is, and it's having fun with it. And so all that it's good fun, and it makes the movie for me because I love a comedic horror movie that can make me laugh, like things like this or Killer Clowns from Outer Space or Tucker and Dale versus Evil, things like that can have a good laugh while being
Tucker and Dale versus Evil is a lot of fun. Tucker and Dale versus Evil is fun.
Absolutely, we might have to pop that on here one day.
Yeah, it's cut for the same kind of like the production style and the production value and the filming style. It kind of feels cut from the same kind of cloth as a movie like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I'll go ahead and I'll lead with scene and I'll let you go first for kill of the favorite kill or death scene in the film. So
All
my
right.
favorite scene was honestly the setup. It was the opening scene where we get Robert Englund and we get the father and son, they're out like hunting for gators and they know they're not supposed to be in this part of the swamp. And Ainsley's he's irritated because he has to go pee and his dad won't pull over for him. And a big ass gator pops out, scares him, so they pull over so he can finish using the restroom. And you just hear a bang. So you're like, okay, clearly something happened. He goes back and sees his dad just mutilated, ripped apart. And from if you've seen the trailer, it's Victor Crowley. If you haven't, you don't know what it could be. It could be an animal, it could be a human, whatever. And you just see Ainsley get ripped apart in that opening scene, and you just see blood splattering all over. And then it goes into the credits where the song "The New Shit" by Marilyn Manson plays, and I think that is a phenomenal cut to where it leads into Mardi Gras. So that first probably like 5 to 10 minutes where you get the opening couple kills out of the way that lead into the Mardi Gras scene with the Marilyn Manson song. I absolutely, those 10 minutes are like my favorite portion of the film where once that song comes on and the credits kick in, I can turn it up, jam out. So that's my favorite portion or scene of the film is the opening scene.
Yeah, and it's a good sort of, they call them stinger openings, cold openings. It's a good kind of mission statement for what kind of movie you're in for. I actually like the finale. I always love in any horror movie once it gets down to the nitty gritty of like the final one or two survivors just trying to pull out all the stops and do everything they can to take out the killer. And everyone's kind of beat up by this point and sweaty or wounded and this and that. And so I just always love that, like, that final struggle, that kind of final war of attrition of like, I'm gonna cut your leg and then I'm gonna stab you and I'm gonna try and impale you on this and I'm gonna grab you here. Like I just love that, and sort of like that back and forth is always a lot of fun, and this movie has a pretty good prolonged finale about it.
Absolutely. I was battling with myself to kind of decide what my favorite scene was in this, but I had to go back to like what and try to remember and what shocked me the most, in the first time I watched it. I guess it was kind of how brutal that opening scene was, and I was just like, okay, like, and of course, you always love seeing Robert England, and then to see him get killed, and then to find out that Kane Hodder is the one doing the killing, and it's like, all right, this is a sweet treat right here
Yeah, that's
for
a
us Jason fans.
fun little inside joke that Jason gets to kill Freddy in a roundabout kind of way.
Absolutely. So that's what made that for me. But the ending of this film, the last, I don't know what, 15, 20 minutes of it, when it's, Ben and Mary Beth and Victor Crowley, Marcus is in there for a little bit before he gets taken out, but the ending is good as well. So I agree with you there. Those are probably the two best, the beginning and end. The middle, I guess, that's the runner up, we could say, for this one.
Yep.
So there are some good with the no CGI rule. We definitely got some good practical effects in here for some kills and stuff, not whatnot. So what was your favorite kill or death scene in the film? Or I'm sure we'll mention a couple.
One that I liked, that just stood out to me was it's the older lady, Shannon. When Crowley kills her, he runs up behind her and then rips her, at the mouth, sort of rips her the top part of her head off, and then her tongue's wiggling around. And like at first, I thought it was just going to be like a hyperextension on the jaw, or like a throat rip or something. And just the way it was filmed, like it kind of transitions from the actress to the effect in like this really kind of good way, and then to just see it rip totally hyperextended back, you can just tell that this was made by someone who hated it every time they cut away from a death scene in any classic horror movie, and that they just wanted to indulge in showing all of the grisly violence. And that one's a bit of a showstopper, especially because it happens to an older lady. Normally older people get kind of like more censored or off screen or not quite as bad deaths, and they just rip her head off, and it's really brutal. And so that one left the biggest impact on me.
Absolutely. What's crazy, that I feel like that anytime I've talked to people who have seen this or something like that, that's one of the kills my sisters have brought up when they watched it, or like that's always one of the go-to like shocker moments of the film. So that is the one I chose as well. That was my favorite kill. One of the other ones I wanted to talk about was, of course, Ainsley, which I did a little bit. He was something I wanted to mention. And then one of the ones I liked, which it's kind of funny, is Misty. She just all of a sudden, I guess she's on lookout, you could say, for Victor Crowley, and she disappears, but her jacket is still there, and Ben's looking. What is he? He's looking inside the shed for a gas can, and next thing you know, he just gets smoked in the head by something. And come to find out that Victor Crowley ripped her head off and threw it at him, and pretty much headbutted him with a severed head. And then he throws her body, and she's missing arms, legs, and head. So she got it pretty bad as well in this film.
Yeah, agreed. It was a good one for sure.
I don't really think there's there's a bad kill in this. I mean, everybody, Doug Shapiro, the director, he gets a pretty gruesome one where he runs into Victor Crowley and he just like slowly turns his head around and like breaks his neck as blood is just squirting everywhere in some of the most unrealistic ways, but it looks
Yeah,
cool.
and and the shovel decapitation was a good one as well. Who doesn't like something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only one that was kind of bland might have been Marcus. Besides him getting his arms ripped off, and
Mhm.
then he gets his head bashed against a headstone. That might be the most plain death
Yeah,
scene in the film for probably the
yeah,
best character in the film.
yeah, which is a shame. Yeah, which is a shame. I do like the trick they play with Ben getting his arm ripped off screen. Like he is him and Mary Beth are like the main characters here. So to actually have the guts of like killing or your main character, even in a horror movie where that's a little more common, it's still fun to see.
Absolutely, and I mean, like I said, this is a fun film. A lot of fun kills, a lot of good a lot of funny
Definitely,
dialogue.
definitely like a party get together. Get 5 to 10 friends together. And watch it and kind of make fun of it and laugh with it as it's happening.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. That is all I have for our favorite categories. So before we get out of here, why don't I get some final thoughts from you, how to I know you've only seen it once, but are you
Yeah.
excited for the sequels? Are you kind of hating me or how you
No, no,
feeling?
no, no, no. This is going to be a fun little. It's going to be a fun little trek. Victor Crowley has a pretty solid design. The overall look, the deformed look, like it's a. I think I wanted to just say a few things about it before we moved out of here. It's that like, yeah, it's a cool mongoloid killer kind of look. He looks formidable. He's big. He's strong. Kane Hodder's playing him obviously, so it's like, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing more. Death and destruction dealt out by that character.
Absolutely, and I apologize to Victor Crowley for not bringing up his design because it is a good design, Chris. So I'm glad you brought that up and kind of shoved my foot in my mouth real quick before it was too late.
No, it's all right. It's all right.
It's absolutely, I like that Adam Green tried to, create another horror icon, and I like to see, I love when people bring up, the name Victor Crowley along with Jason or Michael or Freddie, and because I'm a big horror nerd, so I got friends that are horror nerds, and I introduced a lot of them to this movie, and a lot of the times they say, when they have time to sit down, or they introduced other people to these movies, so it's all word of mouth for movies like this, or people scrolling, like you said, through Netflix or Tubi or YouTube, whatever you're on, and they just happen to see it, and if you're a horror fan, you're like, all right, I can spend 80 minutes, 85 minutes and check this out. I've
Mm,
never seen it before. Why not?
indeed, indeed.
All right, now I will ask you about your final thoughts and what you're excited for, again, if you hate me or are gonna
No,
hate me by the end of
no,
this.
no, no hate. It's an unabashed B movie as a throwback to the sort of to that genre of film. Those Friday the 13th and things of that nature, and so it's fun to have. It's fun to see the sort of modern emulation of that kind of style. Of like, let's just kind of like make a kind of a low stakes kind of movie production that's just having a little fun and getting some violent kills and just doing like some simple entertainment as far as the horror genre goes, not trying to be anything too wild, not trying to elevate to too high of a level or take itself too seriously. There's a place for movies like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've said a lot of my final thoughts on this film. I had a blast watching it in 10th grade. I was 15, 16 years old. So blood, guts, boobs, swearing, good horror icon. I love it all. I loved seeing, Robert England. I found out a little later on after I watched it that Kane Hodder played Victor Crowley. So that made it even 10 times better for me. And so I think it's a good time. Like Chris said, get some friends together, throw it on, grab some popcorn, order a pizza, because this is a popcorn flick. This is something you want to turn your brain off with and just have a good time.
Indeed, indeed.
This film did have a sequel, as you know, I have said a couple times. Chris has said a couple times. It had a direct sequel in Hatchet 2, which was released October 1st, 2010, which was also directed by Adam Green. So, you know, he continues with the franchise he created. So I'm excited to get to that one. I don't know if you'll like it more than this first one. I'm thinking you probably will, and I'm hoping you will. But I think I definitely like that second one a little more, and it raises the stakes a little bit. And of course, as we said a little earlier, we get Danielle Harris, so there's another thing to love about it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to checking out the rest of these.
Absolutely. So before we get out of here, as always, I'll thank Chris because without him, I would not be here. So thanks to you, sir.
Yep. Always fun to do it.
And then I will thank anyone who is out there listening because you are the reason that we do this. So again, thank you, Chris. Thanks to anyone who's out there listening. We will do Hatchet 2 next Monday. So your homework is watch it before we release it so then you can listen to us talk about it. But again, thanks everyone. And until next time.
Yep. Have a good one.
Yo, why is it that the crackers are back there with the honeys and the two brothers? Gotta carry the injured dude. I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen.
I just want to get to a road, then I'm gonna whip your ass.
Oh